यहाँ प्रॉब्लम होती है, हमारा वाईफाई नहीं चलता है, फिर कुछ और नहीं होता है, so this goes on. But anyway, हम अभी अपनी बात शुरू करते हैं. Topic as you can see is of some observations on beginning and development of iron technology in India. And I normally feel that actually this is kind of a saga of the spirit of innovation, which the Indian craftsmen had at one point of time in India. And it was because of that spirit of innovation that India was at the forefronts in the ancient world, and it was known as Sone ki Chidiya, and it attracted lots of visitors of different kinds in India. So if I start with the subject which I have given to you, so straight away we know that the contributions of India in the field of astronomy, mathematics are very well known. And besides that, India also excelled in the field of metallurgy, which is the main subject of discussion here. You may be knowing that the Harappans at one point of time excelled with copper bronze metallurgy. Things like eye needle and technique of Cire Purdue or lost wax, which was a very complex technique, was a contribution of Harappans to the field of metallurgy. So besides that, in the subsequent era, one more contribution of India was distillation or extraction of zinc, which is entirely a different metallurgical technique, because zinc has a very low smelting point, and it evaporates in the process if the same metallurgical process is employed in extraction of zinc. Since Indians were very good in the field of medicine and extraction techniques, they could employ that skill to distillation of zinc. So while the world came to know about zinc somewhere in the 19th century, India was using zinc right from 3rd century BCE. We have samples from textile excavations and several others where zinc is found in good amounts. And iron and steel, which is going to be the main subject here, is kind of a landmark in the growth of civilization, because with the use of iron, iron is also known to be the common man's metal. So with use of iron, the pace of prosperity, material growth accelerated many folds. That's why iron is one of the key metals after the copper bronze age, which we have during the Indus Valley civilization era. And the metalsmiths in India possibly developed it independently. I would be briefly throwing light on how it was believed that iron technology could not be learnt independently and had to be accessed through some source, foreign source. Whether it is true is a question which we will be discussing in course of this presentation. And since it developed very gradually but in a very efficacious way, I feel that it is a saga of human ingenuity and involves lots of spirit of innovation. When the British arrived in India, they found that Indians in a very small area, in remote areas, they were producing very high quality iron and steel. And when they came across, they tried to test it and see the quality of steel which was being produced here, and they found that it was of a very high quality. And I have given some quotations over here. In 1875, all sharp-edged weapons of Malabar region in southern India were confiscated to be destroyed by the British rulers in India because they wanted to sort of de-weaponize them. The difficulty which was faced by the British in course of destroying of these.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt you, but ma'am, your presentation is on the first slide. Are you changing the slide because it's not visible?
Yeah, I am changing it, all right.
Okay, ma'am. Because see, ma'am, on our screen it is on the first slide that observation on beginning and development of iron. So
Okay.
yeah, ma'am. If you can just like it is a it's a PDF file, right, ma'am? Yeah.
No, it is not a PDF file. No.
Oh, ma'am, the file that is open is a PDF file.
It has converted itself into a PDF, it seems.
Oh,
So let me send my presentation to you.
yeah, ma'am. So I can just share it because it's the PDF file is showing, but not the actual PPT is there.
Okay.
No, it's okay, but Anuja,
Yeah,
hello.
yes, sir.
I think let Professor Tripathi be in disguise and let her clear it. She was speaking very well.
Yes, sir.
Only we
Obviously,
cannot
obviously.
see her. Only we cannot see her.
No, it's not that, sir. It's the PPT, sir. The PPT is not changing, sir. The students are writing in the chat box, sir, that PPT is
Oh,
not changing. Yeah.
oh
Anuja
PPP,
ma'am,
you
what you
can.
do? You
Yeah.
do. I think ma'am has sent it the PPT to you.
No,
You
it
say,
has not yet been sent.
Anja, I sent it just now. It
ma'am,
will
you
be
just deliver your
easy.
speech, and meanwhile, Anuja ma'am will be displaying your PPT.
Okay,
Okay,
so
continue.
it is now sent to you. Maybe you will receive it in a moment. So what I was saying that so when the Europeans came to India, they were struck by the quality of iron in India and extensively documented the flourishing indigenous iron technology that is almost up to 19th century. Some of the observations which were made by them, I'm sharing with you. One Captain Presgrave of Sagar Mint, he analyzed the iron produced by the Agarias, which is an iron working community in Tendukhera, which is near Hoshangabad of modern times. And he says that bar iron of most excellent quality, possessing all the desirable properties of malleability, ductility at different temperatures, and of tenacity, for all of which I think it cannot be surpassed by the best Swedish iron. The Agadia piece, when brought to the bend, it showed itself possessed of the power of elongating and stood the bend better than the general run of the English iron purchased in the bazaar. So this is one observation. And another one was by Sir George Braidwood, who has all high praises for Indian steel. I quote, Indian steel was celebrated from the earliest antiquity, and the blade of Damascus, which maintained their preeminence even after the blades of Toledo became celebrated, were in fact made of Indian iron. The Ondanik of Marco Polo's travels refers originally, as Colonel Yule had shown, to Indian steel. The word being a corruption of the Persian Hindwani, that is Indian steel. The same word found its way into Spanish in the shape of al-finde or al-hinde, first with the meaning of steel and then of a steel mirror, and finally of the metal foil of a glass mirror. The Undanique of Kerman, which Marco Polo mentions, was so called from its comparative excellence, and the swords of Kerman were eagerly sought after in the 15th and 16th century by the Turks, who gave great prices for them. Arian mentions Indian steel as Sideros Indicos. It was imported into Abyssinian ports till quite some time. Now let me stop and ask whether you have received my presentation, Anuja. Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am is just trying to give the presentation. Ma'am, you can deliver your speech, ma'am. We are
Okay,
listening to
okay.
you.
Then now let me go back to the salient features of indigenous iron, about which I had been talking just now. Uh, Iron which was produced indigenously uh, was basically corrosion resistant. Like we have one great example by way of Delhi iron pillar. The other thing, if you look at Delhi iron pillar closely, you will find that there are no seams visible. And similar is the case with the beams at Konark and several other places where we have huge iron artifacts placed today. And the capacity to produce homogeneous quality iron and steel in large quantities was very, very exclusive to Indians, though they were using mostly small furnaces, but they could produce almost same quality iron over and over again. So with this specification, we are confronted with several questions. Like, were these qualities achieved through contacts with outside agencies? Alternatively, were these results of long experience and experimentation? We need to look into the history of iron working in India to answer such questions. The main issues which I would like to address here are advent of iron in India, when, where, and how it was started. It began to be produced. How did iron metallurgy develop over the centuries? Are there identifiable stages of development of iron metallurgy? Uh, Also, is it possible to reconstruct metallurgical developments purely on the basis of archaeological evidence? Uh, uh, we have to see whether there are certain literary evidences which can offer some insights into reconstruction of the history of iron technology. Also, since most of the references I gave you were about the Agarias and Asurs who are producing iron, we have to see whether there are certain ethnological models for reconstructing ancient iron which have still survived. Did the ancient metallurgical skill vanish altogether, or do we have a legacy which has been left behind? Uh, We first propose to highlight the context of early occurrence of iron in India. The chronological framework of different iron production sectors may be briefly examined here with a view to date the advent of iron in India. Examination of precise...
Ma'am, sorry to hear you once again, but I have shared the PPT, ma'am. Which slide, if you can say, then I can just go at the slide.
I'm on the problem addressed. Which slide? This is 8th slide. Number 8.
Okay. Yeah. Problem addressed. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I have shared this slide. Yeah.
So, as I said, that we would first like to examine the context and then see the chronology which we have from some scientific characterizations, some dating methods, and examination of precise chronocultural context and stages of metallurgical development if they are visible to us, if they are available to us. A close look at results of analysis of iron objects at different cultural stages is given here to assess the state of metallurgical knowledge and know-how which was being developed by the community at that point of time. And as I said, some ethnological evidence on iron working may be helpful in getting a clearer perspective and a real insight into the metallurgical practices and the processes which they were using, because we assume that many of those methods have survived in the communities which were practicing iron working for generations. So the issue of iron and steel vis-a-vis social and economic prosperity is also important, because after all, we are studying iron with the view to know why iron at all was so important that we need to study it so closely. So if we look into certain early references in foreign accounts to Indian iron, it shows that there was a supremacy of iron, which was noted by many of them. Excuse my spelling mistake here, showing. A few instances which I have put up over here is in 5th century BC, Herodotus, who is said to be the father of history by many, he was a Greek historian, and he observed that in the Battle of Thermopylae, the Indian soldiers fought with arrowheads which were of iron. I wonder why do we have such an instance where Herodotus was surprised to see an iron-tipped arrowhead, because by 5th century BC, it must have been something very common, but he chooses to make a separate statement of it. Then Theseus, who was a Greek ambassador to Persian court, he was gifted with Indian-made swords by the king and queen mother in the 5th century BC, who had visited the Persian court. So that means Indian swords were being exported to Persia, and they were cherished. And because of the high quality and because of its being exclusive, the swords were gifted to the ambassador who had visited their court. Then next example, which I find very interesting, is about Alexander, who had defeated the rulers in the northwestern part of India. And as a tribute, the rulers of northwest India, they gifted him with 30 talents of iron ingots, along with gold dust. The surprising thing is that, I mean, gold dust, we all know that something very, very precious, but iron ingots, they are equally prized, so that they think it proper to gift it to the ruler who had defeated them. So it is indeed something very, very important that iron had achieved a high quality by then. But these references are from 5th century BC to 326 BC, which is the time of Alexander's invasion in India. So by this time, we know that iron was quite exclusive to the world which was being produced here. But somehow, in due course of time, the production of iron gradually went down when the colonial rule took over India. And it seems that some of them, due to this colonial attitude, also argued that iron, being a very, very special attribute of its age in India, was actually introduced through some foreign agency into India. As examples, I have quoted some of the points here. Normally, the British archaeologists who were in India during 20th century, they believe that iron was introduced by the Greeks and Bactrians around 6th, 5th century BC. We know that Taxila was excavated by by British archaeologists, and Sir Mortimer Wheeler had excavated several megalithic burials in the southern part of the country, and both these sites which had yielded iron were dated to around 6th century by them. And it was also presumed that iron was brought in by the Greeks or the Bactrians who were ruling in the northwestern part of India. And it was also thought that since they had some kind of Aryan affiliation, they can also be attributed for advent of iron in India. Whether these assumptions stand the scrutiny of time or scrutiny of the evidences that we have today is something that needs to be examined. One more thing is that in Rig Veda, there is a word ayas. Ayas today is used for iron. So it seems that they thought since the Rigvedic people had come from outside and they were in know of ayas, so they brought iron with them from wheresoever they came. So that is another reason why iron is said to have been brought by them. So this kind of thing gave credence to the assumption that iron has actually diffused with these people in India. And here I have put up a map to show you that these are the areas through which India was being approached, also through the Gulf region and through overland. And when they reached this part, they brought iron and introduced it in India. But we know that iron was actually different and more complex metallurgically to produce, and that's why that is another reason that the metallurgists of many foreign lands like Tyler, they thought that it cannot be discovered independently. And also there is a reason that in Western Asia, like somewhere around Turkey of modern times, there were two communities, Hittites and Mitannis, in West Asia. They were producing iron. There are letters, communications between the pharaohs and the Mesopotamian rulers who were asking the Hittites and the Mitannis for sending them iron. So that is one more reason that they thought that they were the people who were keeping it a secret, and they were gradually keeping it a secret, and then maybe wheresoever they went, they introduced iron. And through these migrations, iron reached different parts of the world. And this region is also because as a treaty between the Hittites and Mitannians, there is a stone inscription which says that they mention the Vedic gods like Mitra, Varun, Agni, and Indra. So definitely some people who worship the Vedic gods, they were living in this area, and that gradually makes people feel that they came to India and they were people worshipping the Vedic deities, and it was with them that iron came to India. So that is the reason of the theory of diffusion of iron in India. Now, over the years, with deeper researches going on, this idea has been dispelled that iron could not be discovered independently. Now, actually, there are several American and European metallurgists who have proved beyond doubt that the first iron that we find is actually a byproduct of copper and lead production technology. And therefore, this assumption that it cannot be learned independently should be dropped. The word ayas again in Rigved, since this is the earliest composition and by the Aryans, and it mentions ayas. So whether they came from outside is a different question nowadays. But whether the word ayas meant iron, that itself is now questioned. I will not go into detail because it will be a very, very lengthy discourse. What I want to point out here is that in the Vajrasaneyi Samhita of Yajurved, which mentions the word ayas, it uses two adjectives, that is Krishnayas and Lohitayas. So it seems that ayas actually initially stood for metal, but with advent of iron, they had to distinguish and prefix the word ayas with whether it was black or it was red. So it was iron, so it has to be Krishnayas. If it was copper, it had to be red ayas or Lohit ayas. So that again puts a doubt whether the ayas in Rigved meant iron. And more importantly, which is more real cause, is that there are several C14 dates from India, especially from the sites in the Vindhya Ganga plain, which is a landlocked region. We are getting very early dates for iron. In comparison, the dates on the bordering areas of India are much younger. So we have to look at the C14 dates from the heartland of India. I have put up a few dates over here for you. In the Swat Gandhar Baluchistan region, the iron that has been reported has been dated somewhere between 1200 to 1000 BC area. In Afghanistan, so far the earliest dates are again 1100, 1000 BC. In China, the dates had been about 900, 800 BC only. But in recent times, they have modified and they are now claiming that they had dates going to maybe 1200 or so, which are much, much earlier. But in India, we have some recent dates like from the site of Dadupur near Lucknow, which was excavated by state archaeology, is 1800 BC. Then Malhar, another site excavated by them, has the date of 1600, 1700 to 1500 BC range. Rajanal Katila, 1400, 1300 BC. And one site which was excavated by BHU with me over there as one of the investigators, we have got very, very early dates, which actually goes to 1900 something. But if we take a conservative estimate, we can give a range of 1800, 1400 BC for those layers from where we have recovered iron. That means these dates are much, much earlier, and merely on the strength of these dates, and there are many dates now coming from southern part of the country, from Tamil Nadu, from Andhra, there are much, much earlier dates now. Therefore, we cannot argue anymore that the dates from the bordering areas from where people were migrating, constantly coming and going to different areas from or to India, they are there, the iron is later. And on that strength, actually, I would like to say that iron must have reached those parts from India. Here I have put up a map. Look at these dates. There's a cluster of dates in the area between Allahabad, Lucknow, and Varanasi, where we are getting these dates which I quoted just now for you. That means iron, and this area is also very rich in iron ore. So it stands to reason that the metalsmiths were here were actually producing iron. I have put a number of radiocarbon tables for you to see, but I think I have already delayed my presentation by problems that we have. But some of the dates, like from Malhar, you see these dates are 1882 and 1630. Then another date is about 2012 and 1742. Another date is this. So we have a very strong case to say that iron in India was discovered independently, indigenously, and they experimented for a long time, and because of that they could develop a very good iron metallurgy. And since I feel that iron must have been discovered accidentally or incidentally, they took much longer period to develop the metallurgy. So I have classified the developmental stages of iron into these three stages. I call it the age of commencement, the age of consolidation, and the age of culmination. And these are the dates that we have over here. And in course of these centuries, the archaeological investigations have revealed that the metallurgy has evolved very gradually from simple elementary wrought iron to a very well-developed steely iron. And at the earliest stage, when which I call the age of commencement, the tool typology is very elementary. If we look at the metallographs, we find that it has plenty of slag inclusion. It is wrought iron and has doesn't have that kind of a strength which normally good iron should have. And these are the tool types I have collected from sites like Atranji Khera, which we find at our stage 1. You see mostly some rods, arrowheads, a couple of spearheads. So, and these are the metallographs that we have from these artifacts. And if you look, there is lots of slag inclusion into it, and the microstructure shows that sometimes some carbonization has been known, but the Widmanstatten pattern is not very conducive to a good quality iron. But there are exceptions, like these two, sorry, metallographs are from this megalithic site of Mahurjari, that is near Nagpur in Deccan, and we find that there are traces of carbonization, quenching, and tempering in these specimens. That means towards the end of this phase, if we places maybe from 1800 to say 1900 BC, lots of changes were already taking place in the metallurgy of iron. This table I have put up particularly to show that a site called Atranji Khera yielded about 77 objects, or 128 objects that includes slag also. That's why I don't want to take this number very seriously. But what I want to show that at the lowest stage there are only 7 objects, and then there are the number of objects is 44. It grows to much larger numbers. And in upper stage of the same culture, this culture has been dated between 1100 BC to about 600 BC. So within these centuries, the number of objects grows many folds, and that shows that the iron is gradually being adopted now. In the Middle Iron Age, you can just see even at a glance that how the quality of iron objects has improved. We are for the first time getting things like plowshares, and spears are much, much stronger. These are two swords which we have unearthed from a site excavated by Banaras Hindu University. And there were some more specimens of similar kind which show that the quality of iron had improved, and the tool typology had changed very much during these periods. These are two more specimens from the site of Dhatwa, excavated by late Dr. K.T.M. Hegde. It is a hoe, and we find that effort to make it into a steely iron had been going on. We find traces of carbonization, quenching, and even lamination in these artifacts. At the next stage, you can see the tool typology has been improvised. We are using all kinds of tools and implements which we have till date in use. This one is a beautiful axe with a shaft hole, and I had it examined, x-rayed, and we found that there are very good, it's a very good case of lamination. Wrought iron followed by steely iron, wrought iron, and steely iron. So that has imparted great strength to this artifact. That means then we have some more specimen. This one is lamination technique again, aside from Shringaverpur, which is next to Allahabad or Prayagraj of modern times. And this is a kitchen spoon. Again, these two are beautiful specimens of steely iron. If we take an overview, we find that the number of objects and variety of objects has gradually risen considerably at these three stages of early stage, middle stage, and late stage of Iron Age. You can see it closely at leisure. And at late Iron stage, which I would call the era of culmination, we find that there is a very evolved tool typology that we have. There's a diversification and proliferation of tools. Crucible steel was developed during this period, and this was very famous all over the world as Damascus steel, because most of the traders from the Arabian world, they were coming to India, buying these things and trading it all across the world. Since it went with them, they call it Damascus steel, which has now been proven beyond doubt that this is the actual steel which was being produced in the southern part of the country, and where they call it Ukku, from which it has the anglicized name of Woods now. And the other specimens you all are familiar with, that is Delhi iron pillar. Then there are similar huge pillars at the site of Dhar and Konark. And there are forged cannons all across the country, which show a mastery of forge building, which the Indian metallurgists had developed. And it proves beyond doubt that ancient Indian excelled in forging technique and corrosion resistant because of content of phosphorus, which has been found to be present almost in every artifact. And we can say that by this stage, the metallurgical techniques of quenching, tempering, lamination had become commonplace. That means you know these ones. An old picture of Delhi iron pillar which has been dated to about 4th, 5th century. And this one, these are the beams of the Sun Temple at Konark. They are lying in the open and they have not corroded so much. And the technique of producing these huge colossal beams had been by force welding these smaller rods and then covering it by some kind of a layering at the top, which protected it from corrosion and from elements. This is an example of the unique wood steel or Damascus steel dagger. It is famous for its watering pattern that you can see on the surface of steel. This is still unique, and lots of research is going all across the globe to produce this kind of a steel so that they can have this kind of pattern on the surface of the steel. It is inherent, integral part of the steel itself, not that it has been added anything from outside. So we can say that metallurgy is basically an application of knowledge of principles of chemistry. We know that alchemy was a very strong point of ancient Indians. And many of those principles basically used in alchemy has been employed into their metallurgical know-how. And we know that variety of metals related to metal-related minerals were commonly used in India between 500 and 800 BC, CE. And more importantly, it had generally been thought that iron was being produced only by the tribal people. And it was restricted to the so-called low caste of metal workers. But we come across number of texts which have been written on alchemy, like we have Ras Ratna Samuchaya, which has been dated to 1100 CE, or Ras Ratnakar, Ras Arnav. They have given a detailed account of variety of iron which could be produced by nuanced technology, by adding this and that, adding to that, controlling the temperature. And King Bhoj, राजा भोज की कहानियां हम लोगों ने सब बचपन में बहुत सारी सुनी है. He was the ruler of Dhara, ancient Dhara Nagari, the modern Dhar. And we have a big pillar at Dhar, which has now been broken and displaced from its original spot where it was erected. And King Bhoj has written a text, Loharna and Law of Pradeep, on iron making. That means there was a very well evolved scientific technique which was behind the production of such good quality iron. And metallurgy, we can say, had developed as an important theoretical as well as practical science by this age. So with this, I would like to run through a few slides which I have about archaeologically excavated furnaces that we come across from some sites. And at the site, a megalithic site of Naikund near Nagpur, we have a furnace which has been reconstructed by Deccan College, Pune. And such evidence have been found from several other sites, like in the painted river level. I just now showed you objects from Atranji Kheda. So from the site of No and Jodhpura in Rajasthan, Atranji Kheda and Jakheda in Uttar Pradesh, we have got evidence of furnaces, remains of furnaces. And several sites in Bengal, like Panjuraza, DB, Mangalkot, they have also yielded evidence of iron working. Malhar has yielded a good evidence of iron working. Megalithic This is the site of Menakund. And I showed you a few objects from Dhatwa. Uh, Dr. Hegde reconstructed a furnace like this, though I don't really feel comfortable with this reconstruction. These were 3 furnaces from a site called Theradi, about from where I showed you some artifacts. We found 3 furnaces in a row, which were used, and they are dated to about 1st, 2nd century CE. These are the evidences of iron working from a site called Raipura. Here you see that this one is a forge. There is a small forge over here, and these are the stones lying in situ, which were used for weighing down the bellows. And this was an ingot which we found from this very site. These are some crushing tools which we have from our excavations. This is the forge which I am trying to expose over here, and this is the upper part of this furnace which we could expose later on. These are from pre-NBP, that means they can be dated to an era around between 1500, 1600 BCE to about 1000 BC. And this is the furnace. If you see, there's a 2-year hole over here. My rod is going across this furnace through the inner part of the furnace. And similar furnaces have been, this is a furnace which was discovered at Lohsan by Dr. Rakesh Tiwari from the site of Malhar. This is another one from the same site. And this one I have put up to show that these are the Agaria community iron workers from Ranchi. And they have, they are standing here with their furnace, which has been fully charged for iron working. So we can see that there is a similarity in the design of furnaces from 1600 BC to about pre-industrial iron smelting furnaces. So by looking at this, we can say that iron metallurgy evolved and attained great levels of excellence over the millennia. Centers came up for production and distribution of iron across the country. I don't have much time to tell you that even literary accounts mention to about 5-6 centers where very good quality iron swords were being produced and exported. So right up to the time of the Mughal period and even beyond, the French and the Spanish, they were also getting Indian iron from several sites, and the traders from Middle East, they came and camped in parts of Deccan for getting real good iron from here. Wood steel was being exported through them to European markets at very high prices. The role of iron and steel in growth of civilization has been immense. That is why perhaps we are so keen about learning the history of iron. And historically speaking, iron technology had very deep impact on society and cultural scenario. I'll just run through these slides. If I have to put the map of material prosperity during this period with which I am dealing, you can see that the settlements during these 3 cultural stages, how they gradually grew in size, naturally showing the prosperity of the settlements too. And these are again some graphs to show about the beautiful objects which we find in excavations, how their number and their quality and quantity is improving through these stages, which I would like to call developmental stages. During this period, after the iron objects became more popular, their quality improved, we find that there is a change, maybe change in leaps and bounds in the material prosperity of the settlements. We find that beginning of writing starts, then there is coinage which comes to be used, fortification of townships in a proper regular way has been found in excavations. For the first time after the Harappans, in Harappan period, where we have got just a few stone sculptures, but during the after the NBP or during the NBP period, especially during the Mauryan period, we find that there are stone sculptures. They have started showing up. The Ashokan pillars you all know about. Besides, we come across big storage jars that shows that the agricultural produce was growing manifold and there was prosperity to be seen. Some of the pottery that we find in Iron Age, I have put up over here for you to see. This one is called Painted Brayware, the Atranji Khera site, which I showed you, and during which I showed you the 3 stages of 744 and 77 objects, how iron objects became popular. They were producing this kind of pottery. This is a rattle for children to play, which I found in an exploration. Following this era, we come across the age of next stage, when we find this pottery, which is called Northern Black Polished Ware, and this also is associated with urbanization. If you look at this pottery, I think this is light, almost metallic in finish and beautiful shine, and much research has gone into reconstructing the NBP like pottery, because you see this golden shine. Some of them they shine like silver, like these specimens. And then we have huge vessels like this one is from a site called Agiabir, just about 40 kilometers from our university, that is Banaras University. They are huge in size. It seems some important center was developing over here, and they were frequently in need of cooking large scale food, and because of travel of the traders from one area to another. This lies between Prayagraj and Varanasi. So along the Ganga, trade was going on, and this site has yielded this kind of metal objects. And in the center, we have got a bronze, heightened bronze mirror, which I analyzed recently, and this has got about 15 to 20% tin into it. The settlements, as I showed, were growing in size. So this is a fortification wall which has been found at the site of Kaushambi. These are the structures at the site of Agiabir. This is an underground structure. How and why it was made, anybody can guess. And this is a well with wedge-shaped brick-lined well. And again, some more structural remains from the same site of Agiabir. This is a pottery drain coming out of either a washroom or a kitchen, and then this water has been drained out with the help of these wedge-shaped bricks which are laid along the wall, and these are called the ring wells. This is used for drainage pattern. Some more objects which I found may be of interest to you. This is from the site of Srivedpur, very famous statue of Lord Shiva with 3 eyes and a moon here. This is an image of Ganesh from the Gupta period, that is about 400 CE. Some metal seals that we found in our excavation at Agiabir. This is another image of a bull at the ceiling, on the ceiling, and it has a writing on it. Some terracotta figurines which are used for worship purposes as offerings. That means the civilization is growing many folds. Just to give you a glimpse of these things, you might be familiar with these. This is the most beautiful image of Lord Buddha at Sarnath, and this you all know what it is, our national emblem from the site of Sarnath, and another very famous image. So what I mean to say that with use of iron technology, the civilization grew with greater pace, and radiocarbon dates have determined that iron technology started in India somewhere in second millennium BC, and it developed from wrought iron in stage 1 to steely iron by stage 2, and the saliency of iron and steel culminated by stage 3, and it continued to prosper till about 19th century, when the British arrived, tested certain iron objects, as I quoted right in the beginning. And with industrialization, the traditional iron technology started declining. Even after the decline of iron industry, for which India was once famous, we find that uh, right till pre-modern time, the traditional iron workers continued to smelt and forge iron of very good quality, which is even now the villagers where we have agarias living and working with iron, they prefer iron and steel produced by these communities than by the iron which is available in the bazaar. And some furnaces and some evidences we have found. I showed you this one from Ranchi. So whatever has survived, I am rushing through my slides now. If we take a quick look at whatever we find by way of remains of the great heritage in the field of metallurgy that we have, we come across some such evidences. We got some descendants of the Asur-Birjia tribe in the bordering area of UP and MP at in the forested area of Siddhi. So if you look at these, they are trying to produce iron for us. This is the furnace which they have produced. The front of the furnace, they have inserted their bellows and sealed the mouth of the furnace. And the bloom after this is the slag which is being tapped out of the furnace, and this is the iron bloom which is now being taken out. So more details of the activity, I thought you will find it interesting. The furnace is now being charged, and charcoal and small pieces of ore which is being put alternatively in this. This is the furnace mouth which has been sealed. Now the bellows are here. I showed you the stone pieces from my excavation at Rapula, and here you can see the similar stone has been placed here to weigh down the bellows. And now the bellows are being worked, and he is tapping out some slag. Look. And finally, the bloom is being retrieved, and then it is hammered repeatedly in a forge to consolidate the iron and extricate the slag which is trapped into the bloom. So, but this kind of industry actually declines because of adverse socio-political scenario which the British created. It was a big jolt to the indigenous iron production. The colonial design, I may say, and the general apathy towards the traditional iron working hit hard the small-scale iron production units. Poverty of the craftsmen that we see is really appalling. Lack of patronage and encouragement from society sapped the spirit of innovation of the metal workers. And the small production units which I showed you just now somehow struggled in remote parts and survived till much later than the bigger industrial centers which we had earlier. And we can only say that the well-planned out design of the British ruler struck the last nail in the coffin of the struggling iron industry by refusing them access to forest resources, which was the very basis of raw material for iron production, that is charcoal as well as ore. So summing up the discussion, we can say that we observe that India has a long history of iron working lasting nearly for 4,000 years. A strong spirit of innovation pervaded among iron workers who attained mastery over the craft through the experimentation and experience. The consequence is nearly the 7-ton Victory Pillar at Delhi, standing tall nearly 2,000 for nearly 2,000 years, which has been called the rustless wonder of the world by Anant Raman, the great metallurgist of India, modern India. The iron production in India, right from 5th, 4th century BCE, adorned the foreign courts as noted by Theseus. Even the London Bridge and bridge across the Malay Straits has tons of iron imported from India in it. Actually, La Touche has categorically made a statement that wheresoever higher strength was required, they used the iron which they had imported from India, produced by the so-called tribal people, and utilized it at all those crucially significant places. So we can very well understand what was the status of indigenous iron. The traditional iron working survived till recently in remote areas as a legacy of the once flourishing indigenous iron industry as metallurgical heritage of India. Before I close, I would like to show you an interesting piece which I worked on very recently. There's a site called Latif Shah, about 100 kilometers from Varanasi in the Vindhyan Plateau. And we have a sample of a small, we initially thought it's a chisel, but on cleaning and on analyzing, we discovered that it is actually a sharp cutting edge this has over here. And this has a sheath-like thing of copper or bronze on it. So we called it a surgical knife. Why a surgical knife? Because I don't know whether you know that the great Indian surgeon Sushrut was practicing in Varanasi. And this region of the Vindhyan Plateau is the area where we have all those sites of Malhar or Nalka Tila and Raipura and Latif Shah. This is the area where iron was being produced and sold out to the neighboring city centers like Varanasi and Kaushambi and other sites. And Sushrut was in need of good surgical tools. I guess that this knife, which has come from the same age of about 600 BC phase, is something which surgeons like Sushrut desired and ordered, because this is a singular object that we have with a iron handle and a copper or bronze tip that it has only up to here. So I don't know whether I would be really getting into too much of imagination, but I feel that this kind of artifact was being used by surgeons like Sushrut, and it was being produced by the same metalsmiths about which I had been talking to you. So if we look at the special features of Indian iron technology, I would say that this was bloomery iron, carbon added through carbonization, quenching and tempering. with long contact in charcoal. Forge welding was another strong feature of the ancient Indian metal products. Noteworthy is the high percentage of phosphorus in the matrix of most of the early iron uh, objects, including in the Delhi iron pillar. And I have analyzed a good number of iron objects, and though carbon, which actually makes it steely iron, is very little in those objects, but it contains phosphorus. And I have learned from the experts that even at low carbon, the ancient artifacts which show high strength of a very high degree, actually they have phosphorus, and perhaps that is what gave imparted uh, strength as well as resistance against corrosion to these artifacts. I feel that students in the engineering students who are working in the field of metallurgy, they should experiment with such things, and maybe this could be India's contribution in future to the iron in the steel industry of the world. So we need to preserve this heritage of technology, undertake proper documentation of whatever little has survived. If possible, give new inputs, innovate and improvise the traditional iron technology, which is actually indigenous. It has been developed by the people over here, uh, though it is dying due to our indifference and negligence. A critical study of archaeological specimens can provide real insights into the properties of ancient metallurgy to be replicated. Our recent analytical study reveals preference of phosphorus over carbon. Can we conduct fresh research on this line and come up with something new? The corrosion resistant and self-healing property of Delhi iron pillar and the wood steel are challenges to expert of metallurgy even today. So this is uh, Professor R. Balasubramaniam, who had been dedicated to the field of ancient metallurgy. Unfortunately, he was actually working on phosphoric iron in IIT Kanpur. Uh, Unfortunate for us, for the country, Bala is no more. Uh, I pay my homage and tribute to him. So thank you very much for your attention and patience.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Anuja, ma'am, Mr. Sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was such an enlightening, and always it's so enlightening to hear you. And thank you so much, ma'am. I'd like to ask Mishra sir if he can unmute and join us for this after discussion.
Mhm.
If I'll ask student if there is any question, they can put it in the chat box or Q&A box.
Yeah.
And Mishra sir, if you can join us.
Mr. Sir, please unmute your mic, sir.
Yeah, sir, please unmute. If yeah.
So let me apologize for all the mess that that has.
No, ma'am.
Has been there.
It's connectivity
I
problem.
couldn't help it.
Like
I had been apprehensive somehow. I told you right in the beginning that it keeps happening every time.
Yes, yes, ma'am. No, but it was such a great lecture, ma'am. I think Mishra sir is having some kind of problem, connectivity problem. I'll just
Anuja ma'am, please unmute.
I'll again ask Sue. Yeah, Mishra sir has joined. Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir.
I think it was very interesting lecture by Professor Bibha Tripathi, and it was a very new lecture for my institution like Macaut also. And Macaut, all engineers and all experts who have listened to it, they all were giving me a phone call also on my call, and they were very happy. And they welcomed your observations on beginning and development of metallurgy of iron in India. And many things you have informed about British discoveries, Indian discoveries, and all with taking back to from 1 millennium BC and the 6th century BC archaeological research, which has suggested. So you have covered very well. So Anuja, there are some questions I think which you have to see in the box. If that questions can be addressed by Professor Tripathi. Anuja, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll see if there is.
If that can be.
No, sir. For now, so there isn't. But I'll ask participants.
I
if
was
there
observing
is.
questions on the top, on the questions
Yeah,
list.
sir. It was regarding some available, if this will be available on YouTube later. That's kind of.
Wonderful.
Huh.
So there was a call from Vice Chancellor. He is busy with some other very important assignments. So he has requested me to convey Professor Tripathi that he will listen the lecture in his room on YouTube. And the prize distribution which we have decided, that program also we will extend it on 27th when that Rupa is coming for the lecture. Okay?
Okay.
So I
Okay.
can
Okay.
come up and finish the program.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Now I would like to present the vote of thanks. And I would like to present it. I would like to thank our respected Vice Chancellor, Dr. Shoikat Moitro. It is Sir who is constantly inspiring us to arrange new lectures and to do new endeavors, and it is Sir's inspiration. And we are entirely, Heritage Cell is extremely grateful for that. And also a very, very big thank you to our today's speaker, Professor Viva Tripathi, ma'am, for not just this lecture, but for her erudite scholarship throughout this years. And she's always a source of inspiration, especially to us young scholars. And it is a great, great opportunity for us to every time hear her. And obviously, we are extremely fortunate to have our director, sir, Dr. Fanikant Mishra, who is also constantly supporting us and giving us opportunity and guidance to achieve new success. And finally, I would like to place on record our hearty thanks to Prem Kumarji for the technical support he has given, and obviously a very, very big thank you to all the participants who have been involved in this lecture and in this journey of Heritage Cell. And as Sir has already told, our winner announcement for the undergraduate essay competition will be done on the 27th November. So we will like to say sorry for the delay, but it is an inevitable sequence. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you, sir. Mishra, sir, if you want to add anything.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. And
Yeah,
sorry
ma'am.
about the inconvenience and the problem that we have initially.
I mean, it
Somehow
was
it-
an excellent deliberation from your side, ma'am. We are very much
Yeah,
honored to hear from you.
And we are extremely grateful for this excellent deliberation. And some things are beyond our hands. Connectivity problems are one of them. This virtual world has given us an opportunity to like listen to a person, but sometimes it's a little difficult.